Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1991 film Ernest Scared Stupid. And I know some people may be saying, this is very different from what you typically do with your channel reviews-wise. And it is, but I do not straight-up horror sometimes here and there. I've done Death Becomes Her before. I did Jurassic Park. And I wouldn't rule out doing some other, lighter horror films, such as like Nightmare Before Christmas or Frankenweenie or, something like that. But Ernest Scared Stupid 1 is actually scarier than a lot of people initially think, being an Ernest film. One of the reasons it actually didn't even do that well in the box office is it actually was scaring children, because the Kyoto brothers, who also did the practical effects and wrote and directed Killer Clowns from Outer Space, did the practical effects for this and the, prosthesis for the trolls, and they look gross, they look scary, and all that slimy snot just all comes together to be legitimately scary. Plus, some of the instances that the kids find themselves in legitimately are pretty scary for younger kids. Now, it's obviously going to range, because some kids out there I know watch like straight up horror films like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, stuff like that, and they're totally fine. But for someone like me, when I was young and I initially saw this film, yeah, those trolls were kind of scary. So there's that, and then there's also the fact that I have a soft spot in my heart for Ernest. I grew up watching Ernest, not just the films, but also the show, Hey Vern, It's Ernest. I like Ernest. Fun character. He's a lovable idiot, and I just love what they did with his character. It's too bad that Jim Varney died as young as he did, because I'd be down for more Ernest. But let's get into this one. Directed by John R. Cherry III, who also did Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam, an Ernest film. Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Saves Christmas, Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Rides Again, Slam Dunk Ernest, Ernest Goes to Africa, Ernest in the Army, and, the one that's not an Ernest title, The All-New Adventures of Laurel and Hardy, For Love or Mummy. Interesting. Lots of Ernest stuff. The script was written by Cherry as well as Coke Sams, who also wrote scripts for Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam, Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Goes to School, Existo, and Lunker Lake. Love that title, Lunker Lake. And also Charles Gale, who also wrote scripts for Making the Grade, Guilty as Charged, Tattletale, and, I love this title, Captain Nuke and the Bomber Boys. I love when I get these just like really out there titles. It makes me really want to check them out. Again, the Kyoto brothers did everything, all the practical effects for this, making the trolls and everything. And apparently they actually repurposed some of the heads for the killer clowns into the trolls. And if you watch this film knowing that, you can see it. You can definitely see like the base of the killer clowns there. So very interesting. Gaylord Sartain, who's the person who had played Chuck in the previous films, Ernest Goes to Jail and Ernest Goes to Camp, did not come back for this film, apparently, because he had a falling out with director John R. Cherry III after Ernest Goes to Jail. So he was replaced by a new character, Tom, who was played by another guy. Sorry, I didn't write his name down. But his character, like, him and Bobby aren't as important in this film as they were in Ernest Goes to Jail. It's probably more about the level of, like, Ernest Goes to Camp. And I did watch these films recently. My wife and I literally have started doing monthly themes at this point, like James Bond January, and then February for us has been Ernest films. Not sure what we're going to do for March, but we need to talk about that. At some point, I want to do Studio Ghibli films for a month, which we have done in the past before. Things like that. I think it's fun, step outside of your comfort zone film-wise. There were supposed to be 3 more Ernest films that were released under Disney, for a total of 6, but this film performed so poorly at the box office that those last 3 films ended up being canceled. One of those last 3 films was also supposed to feature Barkley, the dog who played the very cute character of Rimshot in this film, and I love Rimshot. I think Rimshot was great in Ernest Goes to Jail. I think Rimshot's even better in Ernest Scared Stupid, because you see him doing even more tricks and just general cute things. Also, you get that like heartbreaking moment when he gets turned into wood, but I'll talk more about that as I get to it in the review. The initial concept for this film, this is very interesting. The initial concept was supposed to be Ernest inheriting a haunted house. Honestly, I think they should have done this one and also the haunted house one. But then again, the Disney deal fell through and all that. Maybe do the haunted house one first and then follow it up with the troll one. I don't know. But the haunted house one sounds like it has unlimited options for how awesome it could have been. Sorry, I know some people are probably shaking their heads right now. I like Ernest. I'm just that guy. Okay, so let's get into the actual film. The intro, I think, is really cool because of all the old horror movie footage that's being mixed with Ernest being scared stupid. He's showing all these expressions of being scared, so it immediately establishes the title. He is scared stupid. And as a horror fan, obviously seeing these clips from all these old horror films, it's just cool. It's nostalgia. It's awesome. Even though I haven't actually watched a lot of them. It definitely has a real hocus pocus feel with the troll being apprehended and dealt with in older times in the very beginning, and then the troll placing a curse on the town. It makes me wonder if Mick Garris actually got inspiration for Hocus Pocus from this film. I know for some people that may seem like a stretch, but Hocus Pocus came out 2 years after this film. Consider that. When I was initially watching it, I was like, did Ernest Scared Stupid rip off Hocus Pocus? And then I was like, hold on a second, what year? And I was like, oh, this came out 2 years before Hocus Pocus. I don't know. These are questions. The intro of Ernest is very typical with him trying hard but screwing up. That's one of the things I love about Ernest as a character is he screws up a lot, and it's usually pretty funny. It's kind of like a little bit like Three Stooges type failures with like some physical humor. But his heart's always in the right place. He's always a very pure person trying to do the right thing, not trying to hurt people's feelings or be a bad guy. So it's a lovable character. He's very lovable. He makes you laugh, but he also makes you, feel for him and be, emotional at times. Rimshot is super cute, and what he can do, extremely entertaining. I already kind of talked about him. Barkley the dog, who did work on some other things. Nothing I had seen before, but very cute. The old Hackmore place does look foreboding and creepy with the way they, designed it. The organ music that they play over the introduction to it also helps a lot. This is one of those things where the score really does enhance things for this film. It happens with a lot of films, but with this one in particular, especially when they're showing the Hackmore place, because it kind of looks like, if you play the music differently, it just looks like a bunch of junk. But with the way they play that organ music, you're like, oh, all this junk actually looks like run down and kind of creepy and scary instead. So very important. Eartha Kitt as old lady Hackmore, very intimidating, and she also serves in the beginning to be what is the horror trope of the Harbinger. She is there to warn everyone, to say something bad is coming. In this instance, it's Ernest P. Worrell is going to unleash the troll and potentially his ilk upon the town. The kids will be in danger, all that stuff. So in a lot of horror films, that's the trope of you have this usually older person who's living on the fringes of society, especially where they live, and they are going to warn people. But people won't listen because they seem like they're that fringe person that you can't listen to because there's something not right with them. So, but Eartha Kitt did an awesome job with this performance, honestly. I mean, it's a very particular type of character, but if you consider how the character is written and what the character's supposed to be, she did a really good job with what she was given. She did a great job. Ernest's ability to instantly change to other characters is wacky. This has been established in other films, but it does establish that anything can really happen and you need to just kind of go with it. It does really set up this feeling of just like, this is what the world is. You just go with whatever is thrown at you. And obviously for this film, especially being geared towards kids, for the most part, that's good. Kids are very imaginative. They're more apt to kind of go with whatever. And that happens a lot with these films that are geared towards kids. With how creepy the troll tree looks, it is obvious a problem is coming. Very foreboding seeing the troll tree. And as soon as Ernest is going towards it, since you've already gotten this warning from old lady Hackmore, you're like, okay, it must have something to do with this very creepy tree, and the fact that Ernest is trying to build a tree house there. A very cool tree house, by the way, with all his Ernesty gadgets. And all his gadgets, actually, feel me on this one, Reminds me a lot of Pee-wee. Although I know Pee-wee came after Ernest. Ernest was established before that. So it also makes me wonder, did Pee-wee get inspiration from Ernest? And I would love there to have been like a joint film of like Ernest meets Pee-wee. That would have been great, but can't do it. The treehouse did get constructed really quick, complete with a montage sequence. Obviously they need to do certain things for pacing because it's geared towards kids. They can't show them kind of like painstakingly going through this, making a treehouse. So, but it is very unrealistic that they would get it done as fast as they do. Real quick, pause for horror hydration. Sorry. Gotta love the canned food shooter and the pizza flinger, which since they're featuring it this early in the film, it's going to come into play later in the film, and obviously it does. It is a big part of that final showdown with all the trolls who are unleashed onto the town. So yeah. Plus they're fun. But I do, like, how did they get all the canned food there first? Must have taken a lot of time. And why did they just have these pizzas? Like, also, wouldn't you want to eat these pizzas? I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. If you're familiar with the character, it's believable that Ernest would be so stupid to summon Trantor. Or Tantor. It is Trantor. Sorry. Trantor. Especially the way he does. Like, he literally repeats what Old Lady Hackmore said would happen. And he should be smart enough as a normal character to know not to do exactly what he's doing in that moment. But it's Ernest, and it's been established that he's just very forgetful. He's not the smartest. It's Ernest. Excuse me. Trantor does look pretty scary for a movie aimed at kids, especially with all the gross, slimy snot. I truly think that slimy snot stuff is what takes it to the next level. I also do like that there are a lot of Ernest jokes that get thrown at Trantor based off of the snot. Like, he calls him booger lips. He says something about him having a runny nose. Like, it works. I like it. And that snot looks disgusting. And it's, like, everywhere. Like, the troll is always just dripping snot. And the most disgusting part about it, it's usually going into his mouth, too. Just saying. Sorry about that. They make a big point of focusing on the milk spilling when Ernest first meets Trantor. Kids wouldn't necessarily pick up on this when they're watching the film, but from a adult perspective, they focus so much on the fact that the milk gets kicked over and then Trantor's gone that you're kind of like, yeah, I'm picking up on there being something, like he's scared of the milk. And I'll talk more about it a little bit later, but it comes up numerous other times. The troll's ability to mimic voices of other people makes it more dangerous. That gives this extra ability for it to easily, kind of lull people into a false sense of security and get them someplace secluded to grab them. The slimy troll buds on the tree, which Ernest refers to as looking like Brussels sprouts, very gross. And also, kids hate Brussels sprouts, so good comparison in that situation. I did as a kid. I do love how Tom and Bobby have so much troll-related gear just around to sell Ernest when he decides he needs to suit up and go after the trolls. Love that. Good job creating a false sense of safety when Elizabeth finally looks under her bed, then she rolls over and the troll is right there in bed with her. Extremely effective, good jump scare moment. Don't know how I reacted to it the first time I saw it when I was young, but even seeing it now as an adult, I'm like, that's well done. Like, that's a great misdirection here to give people a false sense of safety, because she looked under the bed and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, we're good. And then, boom, he's in the bed. Very good. And he looks gross. Kenny's run-in with Trantor when he uses Elizabeth's voice seems pretty intense and scary for kids, especially that chase scene. I could literally see kids having nightmares about that after watching the film. This is a film that really kind of walks that line of, is it really this rating? Like, I think it's PG-13, or no, I think it's just PG, and it's just, yeah, it's a little scary. More strong hints when Trantor retreats in the grocery store and on the street due to the Purity milk truck. Then later with the ice cream that ends up dripping onto Ernest's face when he's in the fight with Trantor at the school event, or it's like a town event, but it's at the school, and that like soft serve ice cream drips down on him, and then he sees he's covered, and Trantor's like, I'm out. So you start getting more and more and more hints. It goes so strong that you're like, okay, there's something with this milk, not Miak, which I think is a funny joke. I think my favorite part is when Ernest accidentally hits Trantor with his car door. When he goes to the tree and he sees the buds, and then he's about to leave, and he like flings the door open, and Trantor was running at him, and he didn't know, and he just runs straight into the door and just pops down. It's that moment, and it's also when Rimshot backs into his face and runs him over during that scene where it's kind of like, you know, he's got the rope and he's pulling the truck towards him, and Ernest is like, you know, hit it in reverse, and Rimshot does it because he's amazing. And just like, it looks so funny how he like gets hit in the face and then he falls right down and it goes right over him. I love those moments. Pretty funny. It is sad when Rimshot gets turned to wood, though. But you do get the great Ernest quote, "Someone with a runny nose is gonna die." I love that Ernest quote. Potentially my favorite quote from this film. Wonderful. It's a sad moment, but then you get that levity of him saying someone, you know, with a runny nose is gonna die. He says it with such conviction, and you're like, he just made Ernest super mad. He was mad before. He was gonna take care of this before, but this is personal now. It's a cool and nasty sequence when the troll buds go into the ground and the new trolls pop out. It literally looks like a birth from the ground. Like, first of all, it's cool when they fall, and then they, like, kind of take their time, like, burrowing down into the ground, and you're seeing, like, dirt popping up. My apologies. You see dirt flying up because it's like, I think they were like shooting air through there. But yeah, it's it is intense. It looks really good, and then even more ridiculous is when they start popping out of the actual ground, and they're in these kind of like lighted, what look like placentas that they kind of shed, and they're slimy, and yeah, it is, yeah. With the new trolls, the grown-ups, and eventually all the kids, the end of it is mayhem. This film becomes basically pure mayhem, and it is thumbs up. I mean, I love the way... I quite like the way this film ends with... It's just madness. It's chaos. It's mayhem, and it's fun to watch. It really helps with the pacing, keeps it moving, and for the most part, the pacing in this film is quite good, in my opinion. The pile of ooze and viscera left after the trolls are hit with the milk is gross, but also awesome looking. I love that aspect of it. The effects of them, like, like withering away, not great, but then the fact that they can pan down in certain moments and you just see that pile of disgusting, slimy viscera, awesome. Love the way that looks. Kyoto Brothers did an outstanding job with this one. Trantor's evolution is also a cool sequence, and it comes when you think everything was getting under control. So again, much like the situation with Elizabeth in the bed, you're lulled into this false sense of safety because you're like, okay, it's all being taken care of. They figured out that milk does this. But then Trantor gets super Trantor, and you're like, now what? Now how do you deal with it? And then you see that the milk doesn't cut it anymore because he's so strong. He even says it. And then that's when you understand, oh, it's the unconditional love. Now, on the topic of the unconditional love, I understand that unconditional love is what it takes to take Super Trantor out. But just because Ernest is nice to Trantor doesn't mean that he actually loves Trantor. So it has to be like legitimate unconditional love. And I question whether Ernest could actually make that like mental switch and just be like, oh, I have unconditional love for this troll. He treats the troll nicely, but that's different from actual unconditional love. So that is a little bit shaky in my opinion. Or quite shaky in my opinion. Then we get the happy ending with everyone reuniting with their loved ones. Most importantly for me, Ernest being reunited with Rimshot. Everyone loves that, I'm sure. Nice little bow tied up on it all. It's great. Grown-ups think that Ernest is a screw-up and don't trust him in this film, but kids fully trust him. This is very much typical of an Ernest film. And this film preys on something that's very effective and has been for a long time and gets used a lot in horror films of children in danger. People in danger is usually enough to get people on the edge of their seats and make it feel intense and high stakes. But then when you make it children in danger, it's that next level for everyone because they're innocent children. they can't really fend for themselves all that well. Good thing in this instance, they have Ernest, at least in my opinion. I'm a fan. Would love to hear what everyone else has to say about this film, though. Go ahead and put it in the comments. If you love it, if you hate it, if you're in between on it, go ahead and put your comments. Give me like a sentence or two letting me know why. Don't just say I like it, I don't like it. Also, do me a quick favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would appreciate that greatly. Also, hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up all my videos, which I'm doing 3 to 4 a week at this point. Also, in the comments, let me know, what are some of your other favorite, like, geared towards kids horror things? Like, I've always liked Scooby-Doo. That's been another one for me. The Addams Family, the Munsters, things like that. But let me know some of yours that maybe I don't know about. I'd be interested in potentially checking some out. But even some that are more recent. But anyway, thank you so much for taking your time to check out this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.